A system does 562.5 kJ of work when it undergoes an adiabatic process from state 1 to state 2. If it is made to undergo a process from state 1 to state 2, which is represented by a straight line joining the states, then the heat interaction for the system will be. So this is the diagram that is given to us. What we are given is that when the system is undergoing an adiabatic process from 1 to 2, it is doing 562.5 kJ of work. And then what it says is, if it undergoes a process which is like a straight line, then what will be the heat interaction? So how can we proceed in this question? So we know in the first case, it undergoes an adiabatic process. So if we write down for case 1, which is an adiabatic process, then in that case, Q12 will be equal to 0, right? So we'll have by first law, Q12 minus W12 equal to U2 minus U1. So we'll have 0 minus W12, it says it does 562.5 kilojoule of work. So this will be a positive work done. This is work done by the system equal to U2 minus U1. So we get U2 minus U1 is minus 562.5 kilojoule. So we know the internal energy change between points 1 and 2, U2 minus U1 is minus 562.5 kilojoule. And this being a point function, it will not depend on what is the process followed. So with this information, we can once again apply the first law of thermodynamics for a process which is drawn as a straight line. So in that case, if you want to find out what will be the work done, how can you find out the work done? It will be area under the PV diagram. So first I'll just note this value separately. We get U2 minus U1 is minus 562.5 kilojoule. So now when we do case 2, which is a straight line process, so in this case, we will have Q12 minus W12 equal to U2 minus U1. This is the first law of thermodynamics. So now we already know what is U2 minus U1. It is minus 562.5. So we need to find out what will be W12. So what will be W12 given by? It will be this area. It is area under this diagram. So this area is W12. And what is it going to be equal to? So it will be equal to, this is a trapezium, so it is half into sum of parallel sides, which is 9.5 plus 1, that is 10.5. Now this value is in bar. So we'll multiply it with 100 to convert it to kilopascal. Into, what is the distance between the parallel sides? It is 2. So this is 2. So this 2 and 2 will get cancelled and we will get 1050 kilojoule as the answer. So this is going to be 1050 in kilojoule. So this is W12. So we can come to this equation again. So we will have Q12 minus W12 we have got is 1050. Now will this be positive work or negative work? So here we are moving from left to right. So this area is going to be positive, or this work done is going to be positive. So this is a positive work done. So this is going to be 1050 equal to U2 minus U1, which is minus 562.5 kilojoules. So from here we will get Q122 will be equal to, this 1050 will come on this side. So we'll have 1050 minus 562.5, which turns out to be 487.5 kilojoules. So this will be the answer. This is the heat interaction 487.5, which is option C. So what we did was, first we are given the information that when it undergoes an adiabatic process, it does 562.5 kilojoule of work. So using that information, we applied the first law of thermodynamics and found out what is U2 minus U1 between these states. Now knowing the value of U2 minus U1, we once again applied the first law of thermodynamics, and this time W12 was found out as the area under the process. So area under the PV diagram. So we had a simple calculation of area and its sign will be positive because we are going from left to right. So once we knew the value of W12 and U2 minus U1, we were able to find out what will be Q12. So we got the answer as 487.5, which is option C. An expansion process of air takes place in such a way that the final volume becomes 4.5 times the initial volume. If the expansion process is adiabatic, the final pressure is found to be 1.2 bar. If the expansion process is isothermal, then the final pressure would be dash bar. So we are given the expansion process is such that the final volume is 4.5 times the initial volume. So we have V2 will be equal to 4.5 times V1. Now if the expansion is adiabatic, final pressure is 1.2 bar. So when it is adiabatic, final pressure P2 is 1.2 bar. So using this information, can we first find out what will be the initial pressure? So we have, for an adiabatic process, we will have P1 V1 raised to gamma equal to P2 V2 raised to gamma. So we can write P1 will be equal to P2 into V2 by V1 raised to gamma. So we know P2, we know what is V2 by V1. And for gamma, the question says air, and since nothing is mentioned, we'll take gamma as 1.4. So we'll be able to find out what will be P1. So it will be 1.2 into V2 by V1 is 4.5 raised to 1.4. So this turns out to be 9.855 and the answer will be in bar. So we have P1 will be 9.855 bar. Now what does the question say? If this expansion process had been isothermal, then what would be the final pressure? So if it is isothermal, so what equation we'll have for isothermal? We'll have P2 V2 equal to P1 V1. So we'll have P2 equal to P1 into V1 by V2. So once again we know what is P1, we have found it out, 9.855. V1 by V2 will be 1 upon 4.5. So this will be 9.855 into 1 upon 4.5. So this turns out to be 2.19 and this also will be in bar. So if the expansion process is isothermal, the final pressure will be 2.19 bar. So the answer will be 2.19. In some motor company, experiments show that during continuous running of a car, the temperature of the air inside the tire increases by 20 degrees centigrade every hour. If the tire initially contains air at a pressure of 2.5 bar and 20 degrees centigrade, and the maximum pressure that the tire can withstand is 3.5 bar, for how many hours can the car be driven continuously? Assume air to behave as an ideal gas and the volume of the tire does not change during the running. Okay, so what we are given? The initial pressure is 2.5 bar. So we have P1 equal to 2.5 bar. Initial temperature is 28 degrees centigrade. So we have T1 equal to 28 plus 273, which will be 301 Kelvin. Now what does it say? The temperature of air inside the tire increases by 20 degrees every hour. And we have to find out for how many hours can the car be driven continuously. So for this, we are given that the maximum pressure that the tire can withstand is 3.5 bar. So we have the final pressure P2 cannot be more than 3.5 bar. So for the limiting case, we will take P2 equal to 3.5 bar. And it is mentioned that you have to assume air behaves as an ideal gas and volume of the tire does not change during the running. So we are looking at a constant volume system. So if air is behaving as an ideal gas, we have PV equal to MRT as the ideal gas equation. So the mass of the air inside the tire is not going to change. R is constant and V is also going to remain constant. So we will have P will be directly proportional to T. So we can write down P2 by P1 will be equal to T2 by T1. We know P2, we know P1, we know T1. We will be able to find out what is T2. So we have T2 will be equal to P2 by P1 into T1, which will be P2 is 3.5 upon 2.5 into T1 is 301. So we get T2 equal to 421.4 Kelvin. Now, where did this 3.5 bar come? It came from the condition that the maximum pressure that the tire can withstand is 3.5 bar. So corresponding temperature that the air can take is 421.4 Kelvin. And the question is saying that the temperature increases by 20 degrees every hour. So an increase of 20 degrees centigrade is same as an increase of 20 Kelvin. So knowing what can be the maximum temperature of air, we can find out how many hours will it take to reach this temperature. So we have T2 minus T1 is 421.4 minus 301, which will be 120.4 Kelvin. And every hour the temperature increases by 20 Kelvin. So how many hours will it take for the temperature to rise by 120.4 Kelvin? So the time required for this temperature change will be 120.4 divided by 20, which will be 6.02 hours. So this means that if the car is driven continuously for 6 hours, knowing that every hour the temperature will increase by 20 degrees centigrade, in 6 hours the temperature will increase by 120 degrees centigrade. which is same as 120 Kelvin. And where did this 120 Kelvin come from? It came from the condition that the maximum air pressure can be 3.5. So if the car is driven continuously till 6 hours, the pressure will not exceed 3.5 bar. So the answer for this question will be option B. A steam turbine receives 120 kg of steam per minute. Steam enters the turbine with a velocity of 95 meters per second and specific enthalpy of 2945 kJ per kg. The exit velocity of steam from the turbine is 135 meters per second with its specific enthalpy at outlet being 1636 kJ per kg. The power in kilowatt available from the turbine will be nearly, and we have to assume negligible change in elevation between inlet and outlet. So this question can be solved with the help of steady state steady flow energy equation, which is given by Q dot minus W dot equal to M dot into H2 minus H1 plus C2 square minus C1 square by 2 plus G times Z2 minus Z1. Now we use V to denote volume or specific volume. So to avoid any confusion, we denote velocity with C. Now the question says we have to assume negligible change in elevation between inlet and outlet. So this term will be 0. Further, nothing is mentioned regarding any heat loss or anything. So we'll assume the ideal case. So this Q dot term will also be 0. So substituting the values now, M dot, it is 120 kg per minute. So this will be 120 by 60 in kg per second into H2 minus H1. H2, what is the enthalpy at outlet? It is 1636. This is the specific enthalpy minus enthalpy at inlet is 2945 plus C2 square. What is the velocity at outlet? It is given 135 meters per second. So 135 square minus C1 is 95 squared divided by 2. Now here comes the important part for such type of questions. When we do this calculation will turn out to be in kilojoule units. To be specific, this will be kilojoule per kg. But when we do this calculation, this velocity is in meters per second. So this energy term will be in joule, and being specific energy, this will be joule per kg. So we cannot add joule to kilojoule directly. So we have to have a conversion factor. So either we convert kilojoule to joule or joule to kilojoule. Now here we have to find out the answer in kilowatt. So kilojoule unit will be preferred. So we'll convert this to kilojoule. So we'll multiply this term with a factor of 10 raised to minus 3. And then we can close the bracket. So we get this as minus 2608.8 and it will be in kilowatt. So we get minus W dot equal to minus 2608.8 kilowatt. So W dot will be 2608.8 kilowatt. So the answer is 2608.8. The closest option is option B, 2609. So the answer will be option B. But in such type of questions, always make sure that you have converted the units properly. Now these are the questions for you to try out. Make sure you solve them and submit your answers in the comment section. Do like the video and share it with your friends if you found it helpful. Also subscribe to the channel if you haven't done yet. See you in another video.